double check because that would have been really bad. Could you imagine if we got through the whole thing?
Oh my God,
It's
thank
Friday.
God for
It's
you.
Friday.
Do you know what it is? It's Friday. I'm getting almost to the Christmas holidays, right? And today was meant
Yeah.
to be my last day.
Yeah.
And now Monday's my last day
I
because this is
know.
what
I know.
happens when you're serving people. It's so hard to say no. And if this makes it in any part of the show and Wade Galt
Oh yeah.
hears me, the 3 Day Weekend Entrepreneur podcast, if he hears this, he will be pounding his fist because he's been coaching me for the last 3 months on
That's
protecting my
funny.
time and stuff. So
Well,
yeah, so
okay.
I'm
So we can start from the beginning. You could do your intro again. But yeah, no,
I
I just wanted to
I
double
love
check
you.
that.
I love you more now than I did 60 seconds ago. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you
I was
so
like, do I
much.
say something? I don't know. Maybe he has a different recording thing, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to interrupt the flow right in the beginning, but okay.
I'll
All
do it again
good.
now.
Woohoo.
Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. It's the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. You join me as I meet self-starters and creators to learn about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Please support the show by subscribing, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it helps me out so much if you take just a few seconds to rate and review my show. Today's guest is a creative entrepreneur passionate about spreading the concept that drawing can be used as a thinking tool. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, or what your drawing ability is. Everyone can benefit from visual note-taking. She's the founder of Mind's Eye Creative Consulting, often to be found with marker pens in hand as she helps bring ideas to life, working with a range of groups from non-profits to Fortune 500 companies. Tailoring Talkers, please join me in welcoming Ashton Rodenhiser to the Tailoring Talk Show. Ashton, how are you?
I am doing so great. And I'm actually quite impressed you pronounced my last name right. Most people don't. So I love it.
As well as, I don't know if listeners will hear the beginning bit or take one, but well, they won't because I didn't hit the record button. So that was take two. And as well as forgetting to hit the record button, Ashton, I also forgot my other important question for you, which was, am I pronouncing your surname correctly?
Yes, I thought about it this going into the second time, and I was like, I don't remember how he pronounced it. So I was very impressed. So great job.
What are the variations that you get?
Oh my gosh. It kind of seems like anything but like it's Rodenizer, but I don't know. People just put like extra O's and U's and all these Rodenhiser, I think is the most
Rodenhiser.
common one. Yeah, and it's my married name, so I'm like, whatever. But it's actually an extremely popular last name where I live in my very small rural Canadian community. So everyone goes, "Oh, you're Rodenizer. You're Rodenizer."
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, and my birth surname was Pettigrew, and I was the
Right.
only Pettigrew here. It's not, I know it can be common in other places, but it's not common at all here. So it's just sort of funny. Names
I
are a
don't know,
funny thing. Yeah.
Pettigrew or Pettigrew, as we would say over here.
Yeah.
I've only ever heard it in Harry Potter.
Really? Okay. I've really only ever met like a very few handful where really, I don't know what happened there, but just a couple of Pettigrews came over here, I guess. And that was it. So yeah.
So you are also the latest in what is becoming a long line of Canadians that I've had the pleasure to host on Tailoring Talk. So welcome.
Oh, awesome. Well, I hope they've done our nationality proud so far.
Every single one of you has been amazing. And you already are. So don't worry about anything.
I guess when you have a stereotype of being nice, I guess that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I have a collection of Canadian clients who are based here in London, and they're like among my favorite clients to look after because they are all so nice. I don't know what it is about that country north of the American border. And I don't know if it's the air or it's the water, but there's something going on
Right.
up there that just has produced just such a lovely nation.
Oh, I'm so
Um,
glad.
yeah, apart from that
That's
time of year
wonderful.
when you have to deal with seal pups and stuff. Um, I'm sorry. So here we are today. Thank you so, so much. So, what brought you to my attention and what got my curiosity is that despite the obvious and me needing to, be able to sketch things out and so on, I tend to doodle a lot, when I'm in meetings and I need to take notes and things, because I generally find it a lot faster than writing stuff down. Because in 5 seconds I can sketch something, but that sketch in 5 seconds it can be 5 or 10 minutes worth of note taking. And I always figured it was just how my brain worked, and that maybe the population was kind of split between people who think in that way and other people who, I don't know, are more analytical or whatever. Um, but you're kind of bucking that thought process because obviously you truly, genuinely believe that everybody has a creative spark within them, and it's been your mission to bring that spark out of them. So what were you doing before you started your business, and how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of do maybe like a quick life story in terms of my career journey. So when everyone's in high school and they're trying to figure out what they're going to be or do for the rest of their life, I didn't know. I was top of the class in marks, and I honestly just had no idea what I wanted to do. And I hope it's better now, but there just was so much pressure on, you when you're 17 years old to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I just wanted to be a mother. That was my goal in life. And wanting to be a mother led me into taking early childhood education. And after that 2-year program, I was like, what have I just done? Because I don't want to work like in a daycare. I don't
Hmm.
like, I had always worked with kids since I was a child myself, and I love children so much. I just love their spirit and their playfulness and everything about them. But I didn't really want to work in a daycare. And here with that type of education was really my only option. And I was like, oh no, what have I just done? And I thought maybe I wanted to go on and take some, further that education. But I ended up getting a job at a nonprofit family resource center. And that job was really interesting because one, it wasn't a daycare, which was I was
Hmm.
very happy about, but it introduced me into the world of community development, facilitation, and I worked there for a few years. And my last couple of years I was working there, I took on more of a facilitator role. So I was picture this like 21, 22-year-old, no kids yet, and teaching like and facilitating like parenting programs. This was ridiculous. But the parents were lovely and amazing, and they were just awesome. They were so great. And a lot of them were it was a really interesting part of the city because it had a lot of immigrant families. And anyways, it was just really, it was a really great I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And like I said, it introduced me into this world of facilitation. And I thought at one point maybe because I love children, I would want to be a school teacher. And then I learned about facilitation. I was like, man, facilitation is way better than teaching because you don't have to know anything.
Hmm.
You have this like group process where you're holding space for people and you're hearing what they're saying and you're feeding back what they've said and helping people connect themselves to their own ideas. And I just fell in love with that process so much. And then I moved back to my hometown because I knew I was always a country girl at heart. So moved back to the country and got married, bought a house, did all these things, but I didn't really have a job to go to. Anyways, long story short, I started doing more like volunteer facilitation things. So I joined a lot of community organizations and tried to continue my facilitation skills in a volunteer capacity. Met some really cool people. And just one day, a friend of mine who's a amazing facilitator, he told me about this idea of graphic facilitation. I was like, that sounds interesting because I've always been very creative. I've always tried different art mediums. And I was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And there was a 1 day course. And I went and I took that 1 day course back in 2013 because I remember my first child at the time was only 6 months old. And it was the first time I had left her for a whole day. And that was it. I was like, this is amazing. Like being able to be creative and have this sort of like facilitation skill set and marry the two together was just like, I was like, this is it. I found it. And at the time, like I said, I had one child. Now I have three. And I spent the first few years just sort of playing around, and I was facilitating other types of projects, and I would use the skill set when I was doing those types of projects. But it wasn't until like a few years later that I was like, okay, am I going to go all in and do this like full time? Or is it just still going to be like a side project when my facilitator friends invite me in? I'll do it and it'll be great. But I had went to a conference in Austin, Texas with the International Forum for Visual Practitioners, the IFVP, people that do this type of work from all over the world. And I went to that in July, 7 months pregnant with my second child. And I was so inspired from that conference that I was like, okay, I need to go all in on this. Like this is it. I was like, and of course I was thinking at the same time, I'm like, these people figured out how to like create a business, because you kind of are defaulted into creating a business, because I've only ever heard of a handful of large companies that have hired out these types of roles like full-time or part-time. And I was like, well, if they could figure it out, I'm sure I could figure it out. And so here we are, a few years later.
Yeah, no, you did it.
I did it.
I mean, facilitator, I mean, what that also sounds very much to me like you're coaching. Is that right?
Yeah,
Could
I
you
guess you
expand
could.
on that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess there could be some overlap there, but I think more facilitation is less about one-on-one, more of a group. So if you think about like the default example I always go to is like strategic planning. So you're in an organization and you're trying to figure out your strategic vision. Like, how do you do that? You get everybody in a room and you start talking. But if there's no one facilitating that meeting and really making sure that everybody feels heard,
Right.
everyone's voice is contributing, right? Asking the right questions, to be able to bring out what you need to. So if you're doing it over a day or two, you have your goal at the end. We need to get to here. How do we get from this big mess of ideas to like an end result, like a strategy
Yeah.
moving forward? And having especially if it's a third party facilitator who doesn't have any like skin in the game necessarily, can ask really like tough questions, is really fun. So yeah, I'm sure there's like a lot of like skill set overlapping with kind of coaching. But the way I see my work as like the visual facilitator piece is, instead of feeding back in words what a group is saying or a person is saying, I'm feeding back in pictures. And
Yeah.
because most people think in pictures, and you can say all the cliches like a picture's worth 1,000 words and all that, most people, and like your example there, like I just get goosebumps when I hear those types of stories, because it is such a powerful tool. And people, I think, experience it on such a small scale that I just like amping it up to an
Yeah. Yeah.
extreme. Yeah.
I started to realize that because, a lot of people, you're taught, especially when you do like personality profiling and things like that. NLP is another example as well. And people get put into boxes. And so people having done those sorts of things at some point in their career, or having been put through those types of programs at some point in their career, depending what box they're put into, will then assume that that's them for the rest of their lives and won't believe that they can do anything from the other boxes. So let me give you an example, because I'm not explaining myself very well, probably. But, I know that I I'm a very visual person. Obviously, that's why I do what I do. But then I will speak to other people who'll say, oh, I'm not visual at all. I can't draw. Like, you're amazing at that stuff. I could never do that. And for me, I've kind of always disagreed, because okay, right. One person's definition of what a good artist is, or someone who can sketch well, might be different to someone else's, because at the end of the day, it's all interpretation, right? A doodle on a piece of paper is art, just as the Mona Lisa is hanging up. I don't even know where that hangs up. Somewhere in
In the
Paris, I
Louvre
think.
in
In the
Paris,
Louvre.
yes.
I've seen it
Yeah.
there. Sorry, I should know that. Um, and so yeah, and where I first kind of discovered that people who put themselves in that very analytical, I'm not a visual person box, actually there is something in there that's creative, and that they're able to function on a visual plane, is where in my business, we do a lot of showing fabrics, like fabric swatches to people, and then trying to use words to describe what things are going to look like when they're made. Because for all intents and purposes, I don't sell anything that you can put your hands on straight away. It's got to be created. And I remember once I was on a train on my way to a big appointment at a bank, and I lost my bag with all my fabrics.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. And so I walk, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, I've been waiting to get this meeting for months,
Right.
and all I've got with me is a pen and a notepad, and I have a copy of GQ.
Mm.
So I go in, and while I'm waiting for the guy, I'm kind of looking, frantically flipping through this magazine, and I'm just putting kind of like folding over the corner of each page where I'm like, that looks like a really professional look. That's a really professional look. And then, long story short, I met with him, and it didn't matter in the end that I didn't have any fabric with me. Basically, I just took him through the magazine based on what I learned about him, and I
Right.
showed him what I wanted to create for him, and it was all pictures. It was a lot faster than using fabric. And,
Right.
most clients don't really actually care about the materials and so on. They're more interested in what the end result gives them. And if they can see that, and it was so powerful and so profound. So now I throw it back to you. So, you're dead set on the idea. I guess you will rail against or throw a marker pen at anyone's head who says, I can't draw. How do you
Yeah.
take someone from
Mm.
having that much kind of lack of self-belief when it comes to that ability, to
Hmm.
showing them that they can?
Yeah, I definitely struggle when I hear people say I can't draw because everybody can. It's just a matter of what our idea and notion, like you saying about the Mona Lisa. We have this idea of what art is or what art's supposed to be. And art, unfortunately, has become this like intangible thing that we admire. And there's definitely a place for that, for sure. But drawing as an act should be about helping you remember something, to help you learn something, exactly from the example that you gave in the beginning. It's like you're drawing a quick little sketch that's probably really bad, and it's like supposed to be bad. Because if it was a work of art, like it's not necessarily going to do the idea justice, because you're spending too much on trying to make something look like quote unquote pretty rather than getting your idea down. Especially, we're always pressed for time. So how can you do that in a really quick way? So um I like to challenge the idea of using the idea of drawing as a thinking tool rather than something to be admired. And, you know, when I have some YouTube tutorials and I have things that I've put out, and when I do before COVID, when I was doing in-person workshops, it's beautiful to see people showing them how to draw really simple things with just using our anything that you can draw, like a square and a circle and a line, and you can draw a person. And that person is not going to be, a character or something,
Yeah.
but it's going to get the point across that you need to get across, right? It's doing the idea justice of what you're trying to communicate. So when I talk about what I do, I use it as more of like a visual communication tool rather than something that is to be admired. And sometimes I almost feel like because I've been doing this for so long and my graphics look really nice, sometimes I'm worried that people might think, well, it's not going to look as nice as yours, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Right. So I have shown, and I have a video on YouTube actually, and I've shared with my newsletter list and stuff of like the very first drawing graphic that I ever did back in 2013 after I had taken that workshop. And it's pretty crude. It's pretty crude. And, the growth over time, because I always tell people, if you spent like every day of your life for the last like 9 years drawing little pictures, you'd be pretty good too. So, when people say, oh, I could never do that, I'm like, it's just a matter of your dedication. I've really dedicated my life to doing this skill and doing it well. And if that's something that interests you and you draw every day too, you'd be really, really good. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's getting people, especially in the environments that you're in. I don't know why people, when you tell them to sketch something down, they're immediately sort of worried about you grading their homework or something, and that it's not going to match up to probably what you've drawn on a board, when
Yeah.
that's not the actual point of what you're doing there. Because obviously what you're doing is showing people a different way, because there's a lot of people who, you ask them to take notes in a meeting, and most people will be sitting there frantically trying to write everything down,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually impossible.
Yes.
The more time you spend trying to keep up and trying to write almost verbatim what's going on, there's so much that you miss because you can't really do the two things. I mean, the one thing that human beings are generally really, really bad at is multitasking. There are
Mm-hmm.
studies that have been shown to prove that multitasking isn't really such a great thing, and that nobody can really do more than two things at once well. Um, but then just, the same as, I'm sure you've looked into lots of studies about, how drawing and compare. Well, actually, why don't you tell us about that rather than me? Because you're the expert.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, there's not a lot of research, unfortunately, I think it's more like anecdotal, but there is one statistic that is thrown out there quite a lot. And because you mentioned the doodling piece, that just the sheer fact of doodling, not even trying to make meaning with it, just, making marks on your paper can help you remember that information 29% more. So, what I like to do is just take those doodles and make them a little bit more purposeful with my work. But, I just encourage people to doodle. Like, when you're in a meeting, like, it's funny because a lot of people have these stories of, especially when they're younger and they're doodling in class and they get caught, they get found out. And there's a great short TED talk by Sunny Brown about doodle. I can't remember what it's called, but just Google or go on YouTube and
Hmm.
type in doodle Sunny Brown, and she's got a great little TED talk, short ones, like only 7 minutes about that idea. And unfortunately, a lot of people I encounter as well, they have a story or an experience where they were told at some point by an authority figure that they were doing something wrong when it came to creativity or
Hmm.
art or drawing or whatever. And I remember grade 4, my teacher told me I was painting with my paintbrush wrong. And I just want, you're in grade, my oldest daughter's in grade 4 now. And she's just, just doing your thing. Like there's no like right or wrong necessarily. Like if you're in art school, maybe. But as a 9-year-old being told that I was painting wrong, that stuck with me. And I didn't do a lot of creative work or a lot of art, like for like a large part of my childhood after that, because I was like, well, I'm doing it wrong. I can't do it. And unfortunately, I encounter, because I'm writing a book on beginner's guide to sketchnoting right now, and I'm
Hmm.
doing this whole beta reading process, and which is really fascinating. And I have that line in the book, and I had so many people comment on that line, be like, oh, I had that experience too. I had that experience too, that you had someone in your life say, no, you're doing it wrong. And it's just such an unfortunate thing that at some point, most people seem to have this story where they was just like a switch for them. You're like, oh, I can't do this for whatever reason. Someone said that it looks bad, or someone that they admire said they were doing it wrong or whatever. Yeah. So it's just it's an unfortunate thing that most of us, because they've been told that it's not good, their brain just goes, well, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, that happens when you're at a young age. Right. Whereas you're like maybe in your 30s and someone's like, that doesn't look good. You might be able to roll it off your shoulder a little bit better. Like I had someone recently like, what is that supposed to be? Like I drew something and they're like, I don't really know what that is. And I'm like, and it's okay, but yeah, unfortunately we have those stories, and it's really disappointing because as someone who, preaches this idea of using drawing as a thinking tool, it's really sad. It makes me sad, that so many people that we're going back, like I'm teaching things that they should have all along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Are you finding that that there's a generational difference when you're teaching or when you're facilitating a group, and it's a larger group size and you've got different ages? Are you finding now, especially compared to 2013, because we're only talking 10 years nearly, but 10 years is a long time today because of technological advances and so on, and the way people use technology over what I like to call analog media. So someone like me would have someone like you come in to the office to do this thing, and I'd immediately be taken back to childhood. And I prefer this, and I've got so many notebooks on my desk right now. I mean, I've just like it's like paper everywhere.
Yeah.
And for me, the digital world has its place, like for all the boring stuff, like accounting stuff and invoices and all that sort of thing. I mean, who knows those? But ideas and things, I need those somewhere. It needs to be tangible. I need to be able to, mess around
Yeah.
with it. But then there are younger people who, they've only ever known an iPad or a tablet of some form their entire adult lives. So as soon as you put a pencil or something in their hands, they're kind of looking at like, what's this? Or they start using it and their hand hurts after 5 seconds. How is that having an impact?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but I'll just talk about something that I was thinking about while you were speaking there. Was we have taken playfulness out of our meetings, and I believe that when people feel like they can be playful and have fun, that's where creativity, flourishes. And a lot of times, and I'll team up with, because now it's very difficult to facilitate a group and do the graphics. So when I team up with other facilitators, a lot of times we bring Play-Doh in, we bring fidget toys. And it's funny how all ages, they sit down and they see the Play-Doh there and they're like, oh, they just know this is going to be a different type of meeting. Right. And it's just so funny to see like grown men be like playing with Play-Doh in our meeting. It's amazing. And I think, unfortunately, like we just get out of this idea that, we just think, business has to be like so serious all the time. And I love when I have an opportunity to be in front of groups where I'm doing it, and usually when I'm doing it in a group, I have a very, very big board, usually like 4 feet, 8 feet long. Sometimes there's multiple of them, like just surrounding the room and drawing it all out. And, you just mentioned the word tactile. And, we oftentimes don't have an opportunity to like be tactile with our own information, right? Whereas when there's a break, people get up and they look at the boards and they're pointing and they're building their connections. And we don't have an opportunity like that on a daily basis or weekly, monthly, yearly basis to be able to manipulate our own information. And sometimes I've been in situations where people didn't want to be there because they just thought it was going to be like the same old thing. And sometimes I'll hear a little joke that maybe someone says, and I'll draw a little picture to represent, even if it has nothing to really do with the content of our meeting, I'll bring in things and I'll like win them over. And they come out the break and they're like talking about their joke that they made. And it just sets a whole different energy, right? Where for me, it's like so important for people to really feel seen, feel valued, and feel heard. I was at a meeting, this was like years ago now, but I was working in a manufacturing plant, and we were engaging with all of the employees who had to go in multiple times, even like in the middle of the night, and drawing out, how we only asked them one question: how does this company show you that they care about you? And I had a older gentleman come up to me and he said, I've worked here for 40 years and no one has ever engaged with me in this way. No one has ever asked me how I felt. And I've never been able to see my own words like be represented. So, it's just a powerful tool when you try to infuse a little bit more, like not just playful, but like meaningfulness in a meeting or a session or what have you. So for me, it's always like I prefer to work with people who really care about their audience learning something or engaging with information. Because how many times have we been in a meeting and you can't remember what was said, or you like sat through a day of conference presentations and you have no idea, like you can't remember anything, right? So, anyways, that's my soapbox for today.
No, that's awesome. Because I was just while you were talking, I was just some things were springing to mind because it's not, this using this as a different way and a more impactful way to communicate, and especially when you're trying to get concepts across to people. I mean, the irony is that you and I are sitting here and we're just talking at each other, right? Whereas I've got things on my desk that I want to pick up and wave in front of you and so on but
Yeah.
it's like I always have a lot of props around. So if people come into my environment, then I've got lots of things around that I can then use to explain. So sometimes even when like maybe drawing's not enough, I need to pick, like an AirPods case up and a marker pen and something else, and then kind of tell a story or illustrate a point using objects because it's a form of art, right? But people always get it. They always go away remembering what you told them,
Exactly. Mhm.
because I could talk at you for 10 minutes trying to explain to you what I want to do or what we want to do together. If I've acted
Mhm.
it out using bobblehead action heroes and, my AirPods and whatever else I can get my hands on, you're going to go away from that meeting and you're never going to forget it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people go away from meetings probably thinking this guy's absolutely nuts. Um,
Well, you
but
want people who are going to resonate with you. Like, and if you want clients that are really playful and like along for the journey, like they're going to be the right fit, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, and then, so how are things going with Mind's Eye in this day and age? Are you back to being able to facilitate in person? Have you do you do a portion of that business online? Because people listening to this
It's
thinking, I've got to get in touch
mhm.
with this lady. This sounds amazing, but
Yeah,
they're all
that's a
over the
great
world. How do they do it? How do they work with you?
yeah, that's a great question. And I might be one of the only people that say that COVID for me was actually a blessing in disguise. Because I entered 2020 telling myself, how am I going to work more from home? Because, with three small kids, traveling all over the place, like all through Canada, US, a little bit in Europe, like traveling extensively, I didn't realize how stressful that was until I didn't have to do it anymore. And yeah, so COVID, even though those first few months were a bit dodgy, it really was a blessing in disguise for me because I was actually able to work with way more clients than I could in person and produce way more work and do it all from the comfort of my own home. And so I've stayed mostly remotely for now, and I'm just being a little bit picky and choosy on what I travel to these days. But I have done a lot of in-person localish work
Yeah.
the last few months of this 2022. And it's been really, really lovely to be back in person and playing with my markers, and my paper in the corner has been collecting a lot of dust. And I just did a marker order, so that was very exciting. um, but yeah, so it's been good to be able to do it virtually, and be able to serve clients in that way, but it's also really nice to be back in person. And just to kind of, I actually just did a little, I like to do a year in review, and I just posted it on my blog on Monday. And I drew out 612 presentations this year. Yeah, so I
Wow.
do a lot of conference work. So a lot of those are conferences, and then some of them are more of like facilitation type jobs. But yeah, six, and actually the year before was over 700. So I didn't do as many this year, but the year before was like 711 or something like that. But
Well, that's
yeah,
crazy when you
so
think about it, because the year before we
mhm,
were, I mean, in the thick of all this lockdown
2021,
stuff. And
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
you really
And
harness the
luckily,
power of,
yeah, and luckily I work a lot in the tech sector, so they were fine in
yeah,
2020. So, part of it had to do with my client base as well, that I managed to muster through actually quite well, mostly because of because I work so heavily in the tech space. But
yeah,
it's fun though, like I get to sit in and listen to very fascinating conversations and get to learn about a lot of different topics. Like I just did a focus group, a couple of them last week and one this week, about education in hairstyling with black and textured hair, and
hmm,
how do we incorporate more training in that. So like I get to listen to really interesting conversations, yeah, that you never really get to learn anywhere else, really, and not just listen in, but like really learn about like the struggles and the good things and the bad things about specific industries and organizations. So yeah, it's really interesting.
but every time you're facilitating something, if especially if you've got your marker pen in hand and you're, kind of helping them to art, use your method to articulate these ideas and so on, as you're doing it, that's just going into Ashton's hard drive of knowledge, right?
Yeah, it
So,
is. It really
right.
is.
So
Even
you
though I
must,
really try, like in when I'm doing it, I have it's impossible to put all of your bias aside, right? Like that's
of course.
impossible. But I really try my best to be as an outside observer as much as possible. And whatever's said is what I'm capturing. I'm not filtering it through the Ashton filter and going, this is what they said, right? So that can be one of the biggest challenges, to be honest with you, is really being a true reflection of what they're saying and really taking my own personal opinions and things out of it. I'm picky in terms of who I work with. Like I'd never work with a company that their values or morals didn't align with mine,
Yeah.
but you never know what happens. And sometimes I have to talk to clients, especially if we're going in and doing like I mentioned earlier, like that employee engagement session where like I'm gonna draw stuff that they're not gonna like. And they have to be prepared for that. Like I'm gonna write what they say, and they might not say good things, and that's just the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
If people aren't open, if someone's talking to me and they want to do this but they're not open to that, like they're just not my person, because I'm like that's how it goes,
That's the
you
thing,
know
because when people are when you're getting people to talk to you and then you're drawing what they're saying, you're basically holding a mirror up to them.
exactly, yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And saying, this is what you feel, is this right? And this is what you've said, is this right? When I'm in groups, it's great because they can tell me when I spelled something wrong, and like come up and say, oh, can we add this in here and add that there? But yeah, it's really fascinating to really engage with people in that way too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And I see it as like not just that interpretation, like a visual interpretation of what you said, but it's like that mirror. It's a really great way to describe it. It's like, this is what you've said. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one interesting thing you said, just to kind of get us towards the close, but it's a concept that's come up so much, not just on my podcast, but on so many others, where self-starters like us are kind of having these conversations. Is once your business has been established for a certain amount of time, you kind of get into a groove and you start to work out the clients that you prefer to be working with, and that then helps
Yeah.
when you're, either looking at people coming in at you to say, do they fit with my values, or when you're prospecting to see who you might want to work with and who you might want to approach. So if let me ask you this in a different way to how I ask everybody else, because it's you, Ashton. If you had to if you had to draw your perfect client avatar,
Oh my
what would
gosh.
what would they look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll just say the first thing that comes to my mind is they have a big smile on their face, right? Because I like working with people who are really embracing that playfulness and understand that how important it is and want to shake things up and do something different. Like maybe they've got colored shoes. Maybe like their shoes are like tie dye or something. um, and they've got some money in their pockets. Always that's always a good thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, like someone who understands the value. I'm kind of, because I've been doing this long enough, trying to convince someone of the value. It's just like I don't got time for that anymore.
No.
But I feel like I've been pretty brazen on client calls lately. I'm like, I only work with people who are fun. Like, are you fun? Are you easy to get along with? Are you going to nitpick? Like, am I going to send you a graphic and then you're going to want like a million edits? Because I hate doing edits so much. Because I'm like, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? If that's not what you meant to say, that's too bad because it is what it is. For at least conference work, at least from
Yeah.
speakers
Yeah.
presentations. But yeah, I like work, like, yeah, someone who maybe they got like a little thought bubble and they're like, I really care about people learning, right? It's not, and I'll just speak about conference because I was just mentioning it. If you're a conference organizer and you're just like trying to check some boxes, like that's probably not my right person because, they, I really want to work with people who really care about their audience and the people in the room, and that engaging and feeling heard. And then there's a whole which we won't even have time to talk about today, but there's that whole other angle about like neurodiversity and accessibility. And like I've been adding audio descriptions to all my graphics, like trying to make things even more accessible. And, we we expect so much from people to sit there for a whole day and listen to like 10 presentations, and some people like literally physically or mentally cannot sit there for 10 hours and listen to all these conversations or these presentations. But we don't want people to miss out, right? Just because they're unable to do so. So if you can look at the graphic, and we live in such an instant gratification world where like if you can look at the graphic and in less than, I don't know, let's say like 30 seconds, you can get the gist of what the outcome or what the
Hmm.
lesson was,
Yeah.
and then you can potentially put that lesson into action, which is what I hope most presenters want people to do, is actually take some of their ideas, theories, or advice and like actually do something with it. Like, you're going to be golden, because if you can be able to have the visual representation of what was said and you care about people actually learning something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went off on another soapbox there, but
No.
my avatar, my perfect person would have some of those qualities for sure.
I don't think that was so awesome. I don't think you realized in the last 90 seconds or whatever that was just how many teaching points you gave.
Okay, there you go. I'm smart, I
Like
guess.
I get you, you're super smart. You're smarter than me. Which isn't very hard. If my wife was here, she would say that. But yeah, sorry, that's my dog Emily. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I tried to turn Zoom's background suppression thing on, but I think like the frequency she barks at, it's
Oh, really?
coming.
No, I didn't hear it.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I didn't know. I heard the whole story in one of your episodes about your dog. I do have a 1-year-old uh chocolate lab, so I get it. I get the
Yeah.
dog
Well,
pest
she's
thing.
a
Yes.
little cavachon with a chip on her shoulder. So yeah,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
just, I love her so much, but yeah,
She's got to make
equally,
it into every episode, right? She has to at
she,
least be mentioned once.
I know. I mean, technology is really trying to progress to a point where I don't have to physically edit her out. But so anyway, to go back to the important point, which was I don't think you realized how many valuable teaching points you literally just rammed in there in that little 90-second. So that was just awesome. Thank you. So I don't want to keep you any longer because I know how busy you are. So I want to ask you about your book.
Oh, yes.
Is that out, or is that something that you're currently working on?
No, I just finished I started it in March of 2022, and I'm hoping it will be launched in April of 2023. So
Okay.
it'll be called the Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting. We didn't really talk about the term sketchnoting, but sketchnoting is more of like a personal note taking. So I do it on a professional level for other people, but sketchnoting is more of a tool for same skill set, but just more your own personal note taking. So I've been really it's been really interesting process writing this book, and I've done multiple beta reading rounds, and I'm really I'm just going into the design phase now. I feel good enough about the content, and a lot of it, there's lots of drawings in it, of course. So, but awesome. I do have I actually just recorded a little workshop sort of in preparation for the book launch that people can download, and it's draw your first sketch note. It's like a 15-minute video of me walking you through. It's actually, I have it here, like the little draw your first sketch note.
Just
I walk through.
Keep it right there for me.
I put some extra. I was doodling on it the other day, so I talk about letters and lines and boxes, containers, and some color, and introduce the idea of visual vocabulary, visual, and the sketchnoting process, and show you how to draw a little box person. So, so sketchnote101.com is where you can go to download the 15-minute workshop. And I'm really hoping that after I've had a couple people email me, even since I just released it this week, I had a few people email me their sketches from walking through it, which was so amazing. To kind of go back to a question way in the beginning of our conversations about like, how do you walk people? Like, how do you encourage people that like they can draw? So after 15 minutes, I hope you feel confident you can draw a couple of things.
I'm going to go check that out, and I'm going to make sure that link is in the show notes along with your website, your business website, which is mindsedcreative.ca. Your YouTube channel.
I do have a YouTube channel. I'm hoping to do some more videos here in the new year. There's like just a lot of stuff there about like, what is sketchnoting? What is visual communication? What does that look like? And then there's a few like drawing tutorials, and I walk through how to draw like a sketch note from a Blink that I listened to from Brene Brown. And so there's lots of fun little things on there that I've posted over the last year or so, but people can certainly go check that out too.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Now, we didn't get on to the sketchnoting side of things, but what I would like to do, if I haven't scared the Jesus out of you, when the book's launched, will you let me know when it's available to pre-order?
Yeah, sure.
And then once it launches and I have become a student of yours through the book, I'd love to have you back on, and then we can get into more of the kind of personal side of things.
I would love that. That would be amazing. I would love that so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Have you had fun today?
It was so fun. It was so fun chatting with you. You're so easy to talk to, and you ask great questions. So I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. So I will make sure I have all the links in the show notes. And we will definitely do this again next spring once that book is out there. In the world, yes. And I can't wait to well, firstly go through. I want to say read it, but work through it, and then we can get you back. Ashton, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for joining Ashton and I on this episode. Don't forget that we're on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast, and I love feedback, so email me at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send this episode on to people who might get some help or be inspired by Ashton today. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next one.